Hello, darlings. Today we're going to take a look at what standards-based grading is going to look like in science. You're already doing this in geography, so we just want to see what it looks like in this class. So we started off class by taking a look at a couple questions here, right? Of like, if you get a 65% on a test, what does it tell you? If you get a C plus at the end of the quarter, what does that tell you? And ultimately, grades are supposed to communicate what you know or what you don't know, what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. But they usually don't, right? That 65% on your test, like that doesn't tell you what you're good at, that unit, right? Obviously, you're really mastering some things and maybe not other things, or maybe everything you kind of have like an okay understanding on. But 65% doesn't tell you one way or the other. Now, remember that one of my goals this year was for science to be a mastery-based course, which means that it's really important to me that I know and that you know what you are and are not mastering. That way you know what to focus on. So for semester 2, that's quarter 3 and quarter 4, we are going to use standards-based grading. So what exactly is standards-based grading? Standards-based grading is when you're graded on several particular learning goals, which we call standards, instead of individual assignments. Now, for standards-based grading, we're going to have 4 different categories for our standards, which I'm going to talk about more. So our old way of grading in science was that we had this kind of breakdown. We had 80% of things were large assessments, and then 20% of your grade was classwork and formative. That told you a lot about how you were doing on things like tests and homework, but not necessarily what you were doing well at and what you were doing poorly at, what you needed to focus on more as far as your understanding. So this semester, so for quarter 2 and quarter 3, we're going to take these 4 categories that I mentioned before and break them into 25% for each. So 25% of your grade is going to come from things that you know and understand, 25% from inquiring and designing, 25% processing and evaluating, and 25% from reflecting on the impacts of science. So that's great and all, but what do each of those categories actually mean? When we say knowing and understanding, what are we talking about? Basically, what's your scientific knowledge like? Are you able to apply your scientific knowledge, especially in familiar and unfamiliar situations? Our next one is inquiring and designing. This is more like, can you outline problems and questions that you want to look into? Can you design scientific investigations and models to solve those questions? Processing and evaluating is about collecting and transforming data. When we say data, we mean things like numbers and observations. So basically, can I look at information and can I come to conclusions about that? And then lastly, we have reflecting on the impacts of science. So when we're talking about reflecting on the impacts of science, this is kind of like summarizing ways in which science is applied, documenting the work of others, using sources. We've gotten some practice with this with our informational stories. Now, we don't just want to know, like, are you knowing and understanding? We want to know what you're knowing and understanding. So this unit, knowing and understanding, is to be broken into 3 different parts here. All right. That way we know maybe you're really knowing about the history of planet Earth, but maybe you're struggling with understanding plate tectonics and large-scale interactions. So again, remember, the goal here is to communicate to you, what do you know well, and what do you maybe need to focus on? That's an eyeball. More. Now, our next one, inquiring and designing, this is going to be looking at things like creating testable questions about Earth's surface, designing models that illustrate Earth's changing surface. So that's what we're going to be looking at. For processing and evaluating, can you take data about geology? Can you analyze patterns in Earth's changing surface? And then lastly, reflecting on the impacts of science, it's going to be about constructing explanations, either about Earth's surface or about the geologic timescale. So just by looking at the assignments on PowerSchool, you should be able to figure out really quickly what you're doing well at and what you maybe need to look at and work on more. What are the skills that you need to be developing more? So let's say that, for example, Sarah is doing really good she's having great marks in these three categories. We know now that she's doing really great at knowing and understanding. But maybe for this one here or this one here, she has like a lower grade. Okay. That again tells us information. That tells us, okay, Sarah is really struggling with processing and evaluating. So maybe we want to sit down and look at interpreting geologic data, maybe together or in a small group, to help her get better at that. So again, just changing the conversation from you need to redo this assignment to what are you doing well at and what do you need to work more on? So in PowerSchool, it's going to end up looking like this. You're going to have these assignments that are in there, and you are going to be getting a score for those, obviously. But we are really focusing on progress and not perfection with standards-based grading. What that means is at the beginning of the unit, you probably won't know very much about the history of planet Earth. You probably won't know very much about plate tectonics or Earth materials and systems. So as we start to cover these, you might start off with like a D in these. And a D is equal to basically a level 1 out of 4. So you're just beginning to understand this. And that's totally fine. In fact, at the beginning of a unit, you're going to see probably a lot of Ds. Pretty much nobody is going to be at a level A for any of these, because a level A would mean advanced understanding. And we just will have started looking at this. Now, my goal is not to punish you. My goal is not to freak you out or freak your parents out. So whenever we're just starting to do this, so the first lesson or first 2 lessons that we are working on with this D, if you have that, is going to be exempt. That means it's not going to be counting towards your overall grade. As we continue to work on these different categories, we'll be building up to higher levels, maybe like a 2 out of 4 or a 3 out of 4 or a 4 out of 4, right? These are levels that we're building onto to try to ultimately gain either an advanced or meeting the standard. Okay? So these grades will continue to change, and we're going to look at that more. Each time that we have an assignment, I'll also let you know which standard this is part of. So like this assignment here, this is from U3L1, is looking at the history of planet Earth, which is a knowing and understanding standard. And the activities that are related to that are activities 1, 2, 4, and 5. Then we have our second one is analyzing patterns in Earth's changing surface. This is from processing and evaluating, and only activity 3 had to do with this. Now, you'll notice that for the history of planet Earth, there are 3 potential levels here. It could go as high as level 2. So we have level 0, you didn't show any evidence of it. Level 1, you're able to do it with limited success. Level 2, you're able to do it and be fairly successful. What I mean by this is you're able to apply scientific knowledge and understanding to the history of planet Earth. So if at this point you are, let's say, beginning, you're somewhat able to do this, but not quite, and then you're also beginning here, then that means that on PowerSchool, what you'll see is that for the history of planet Earth, right now you have a D. Remember again, D means you're level 1 out of 4. And then in the comments for U3L1, the highest level you could get would be level 2. So it will just say below. You can resubmit that assignment. You can make fixes just like you always have. And if you do, and let's say that you improve, then you can increase to level 2. So maybe then it would say met. If that's the case, I will change this grade here, and this will become, now you're at a level 2 out of 4. So 2 out of 4 is the same as a C. Now, you'll notice that like a C is the highest you can get from this first lesson here because we haven't done that much. But whenever we go to our next lesson, maybe we're revisiting that material again. So at that point, the highest level you could get is level 3. If you did get that, if you met it, then again, your grade would change on the same assignment. So now you're level 3 out of 4, and a 3 out of 4 is going to be a B. So instead of having a bunch of different assignments, U3L1, U3L2, U3L3, U3L4, you are just going to have like that one single assignment that's tracking how you're doing with understanding the history of planet Earth. And you're going to have one grade that's changing based on the level of your understanding. Are you still at a level 2? Are you now at a level 3? Maybe you show with your project that you are at a level 4, right? So it's, and obviously a level 4 would be an A. So this is going to be a dynamic grade that is constantly changing throughout the unit. At the beginning of the unit, you're going to start off with a lower level, right? So you're going to start off as like a level 1, a level 2, which means you're going to start off with a level like D or C grade. Don't freak out when that happens, because remember, our goal is that will be changing. And by the end of the unit, you should have a higher level of understanding on this. So maybe at this point you're a level 3 or a 4, which means for this particular lesson, that would be a B or an A for this assignment. So that means that what is on PowerSchool is also going to change. So this one here, right? This might change to maybe a B now because we're at a level 2. And that same thing is going to be happening for a lot of your grades. So as we do several lessons on them, those grades are going to be changing. And as those grades change, it should be really clear to you what you maybe need extra help on. So for this particular student, right, they can see, okay, they're really struggling with testing, creating testable questions about Earth's surface. And they're kind of struggling with constructing explanations about the geologic timescale, analyzing patterns in Earth's changing surface, and plate tectonics. Other things they're doing pretty well in, but these are skills that they want to focus on. Now, something to note is that once we have been working on these for a little while, then these are going to go live. So after we've done a couple of lessons on each one, then like once we get to like kind of like that level 2 or level 3 is where you should be at, then these will stop being exempted. And so whatever your overall grade is here, that would be reflected on PowerSchool. And that is a great time, or even before then, to really focus on, okay, what are these skills that I need to improve at, and how can I do that? Now, one last thing. What does this mean about must do, should do, and aspire to work? Well, we're still going to have that, but it's not going to always affect your grade every week and every lesson like it did before. Should do and aspire to work is going to help you to push your level of understanding. What that means is that maybe some weeks, if you just do the basic work, the highest level you're going to get is maybe level 1. If you do those should do and aspire to, you're going to be showing a higher level of ability, so maybe that would push you to a level 2. Also, by doing should do and aspire to work, again, it's not necessarily going to affect your grade every single week, but it might help you so that eventually, when we get to the end of that unit, you are better prepared to reach that final level 4. Level 4 is an advanced level of understanding, which means that you're showing that you're past what we're trying to achieve at our grade level here. You're beyond the standard. So really focusing on consistently keeping up with that should do and aspire to work is a great way to set yourself up for success with that.